Welcome back to the Go to Go podcast, man. Episode 56, week 2, the NFL season coming right up, man. This episode, we're going to cover another segment, Hot or Not. We're going to break down a couple select games we got from week 1, and then we're going to make our week 2 predictions as well. But before we jump into anything, taking a week 1 crown was me, 10-6. You 8-7, so both above 500, man. As you know, it's a long season, so we still got plenty of weeks left, man. But starting us off, man, hot or not, go ahead and why don't you start us off this week?
All right. Starting it off, hot or not, the NFC looks to be the better conference right now after week 1.
I'm going to say that's a little bit of a hot take. The 49ers, as I said, man, elite team. Definitely, up there in conversation for top 3 teams if you want to put them there. You still got your Eagles. The Chiefs did take a loss to the Lions, so I see where you get the NFC narrative from. No Travis Kelce. Kadarius Toney just looked like he was scared on the football field, trying to catch a pass. Some AFC teams dropped in stock after week 1, including the Bengals and Ravens, but I kind of expect them to turn it around. For the Bengals, Joe Burrow faced his kryptonite in a bad weather game, so kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. The Ravens, they're the team that really looks shaky to me. We'll talk about the Steelers in a little bit as well, and then, with the Jets and their injury to Aaron Rodgers, how they're going to shape out, and the Bills' woes as well. So I see, I just think it's a little too early to hit the panic button on the AFC when we came in with them so strong. I think we got to give them, a few weeks to kind of get it set in stone. Just week 1, but the NFC, the stock is definitely rising. They're on the come up.
All right, here's when you're like, hot or not, the Dolphins are the best team in the AFC.
I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is not a hot take, man. They're definitely up there for the conversation. I was sitting there watching that game on Sunday, and I was like, when the Dolphins had the ball driving, I was like, this is Tua's moment. They kind of set in stone, like, hey, this is why they took me above Herbert. This is why I deserve to be in that conversation of elite quarterbacks in this league. And he went out, delivered. I think it was a 3rd and 10, steps up in the pocket, throws on a run. Tyreek Hill down the sideline. I mean, he took a shot on 3rd and 10. When in your own territory where you just maybe want to make it manageable because possibly could have been a 4-down scenario. He hit Tyreek on that play, and just the throws he made all game, there was a couple questionable where he threw in a Tyreek double cover, underthrew, but Tua was making great throws. The defense stepped up when it needed. Vic Fangio, not a big blitzer, dials up that blitz late in the 4th on that last drive, had Justin Herbert thrown off. Once they come together, get that run defense settled, that's where they struggled. I think they definitely deserve to be up in that conversation. So not just yet a, hot take. So.
All right, yeah, the Dolphins, they definitely look good. We'll talk about them. And then my last one is hot or not. When Cooper Kupp returns, the Rams can have the best offense in the league.
That is just a bit of a hot take. I mean, offense is still good. Matt Stafford, gunslinger. He looked healthy. That elbow finally looks good. Happy for Matthew Stafford over there in, L.A. We're just talking about Puka. I forget. Whatever. Yeah. We're just talking about him. Van Jefferson, solid. Tutu Atwell had a really good game as well as kind of that slot receiver. Cooper Kupp comes back healthy. If he looks like, even 75% of his former self, definitely boost up. They could be in the conversation for a top offense possibly, but I just don't think they're there just yet because I think Cam Akers had 21 touches and maybe like 28 yards in the running game.
Wasn't that efficient, yeah.
So, they got some places to clean up, but passing-wise, we know what Stafford can do and when he gets it going healthy. So, we'll see in a couple of weeks. They could be up there if they get that run game, decent at least.
Mm-hmm. And those are my 3 for this week 1.
Okay. I'm going to start you off, man. Hot or not, Pickett's preseason was a fluke.
I'm gonna say that's not a hot take, man. Coming into week one before this week, I was the Steelers truther on Kenny Pickett's side, perfect passer rating or best quarterback in the preseason. But week one, when you're going against the best defense or one of the best defenses in the NFL, it's a lot different than the vanilla schemes you see in the preseason. 49ers were dialing up the whole game. It just looked like Kenny Pickett and his receivers were either not on the same page or just Kenny Pickett was late. A lot of miscommunication. Offense just was non-existent. Couldn't run the ball. Passing game wasn't there either. And that 49ers defense looks to be just as good as they were last year. So it could be, maybe if they were playing a team that wasn't the 49ers, they would look better. But there was also some things on the Steelers side where it didn't really matter who they were playing. The Steelers made mistakes in terms of, not being on the same page. Kenny Pickett missing throws, injuries. Deontay Johnson went out with a hamstring. So it was like the perfect storm for that Pittsburgh Steelers offense. So right now, I'm going to say it's not a hot take saying that it was an overreaction or Kenny Pickett's preseason was, kind of fool's gold. They seem to be in some trouble right now.
And, I mean, a stellar performance from TJ Watt on the other side of the ball. You get 3 sacks, kind of, deflates the offense, but didn't really look like that. Kind of gives team momentum, and Steelers couldn't capitalize.
I would say, good job for TJ Watt, but defensively, it wasn't, the best showing for the Steelers as well, especially Patrick Peterson on the outside talking, a little smack before the game.
Tells.
Saying they got some tells. We'll talk about it afterwards, and then proceeding to get scored on at least 2, I think 3 times. But yeah, Brandon Ayuk was definitely cooking them. So might be time to hang it up for Pat Pete.
Hey, he's up there. It went from Joe Hayden to Pat Pete on the back end of careers. I mean, Pat Pete a little more than Joe Hayden, but I mean, we'll talk about the Steelers as well. And hot or not, the Jets will make a move for a new quarterback this year.
I think it's a hot take, especially at this point. Well, I don't think it's a hot take, but I don't think they'll make a move. Like, I could see it happening. Like, everyone's saying, like, oh, Brady's going to come back.
Do you think it would be a free agency move, or do you think they would be willing to do a trade?
I mean, it's tough to do the trade because they just gave up stuff in terms of draft capital for Rodgers. So now are you looking at players? I know they got a really deep defensive line. Maybe one of those young developing pass rushers could be, a source. But I think at this point, you like that team. You like what you have. All training camp, you got your roster. All those guys have been there making plays. So I think you would try to go the free agent route. Now there's names, Carson Wentz is out there. I believe Jameis Winston. So there's a few names. Tom Brady speculations. But I just think at this point, man, you kind of just got to just chalk it up and just hope Zach Wilson can just not turn the ball over as much and just play kind of, distributor instead of hero playmaker like you wanted him to be at the number 2 overall pick. Be more like Brock Purdy and just, the last pick in the draft and just be like a conductor, just get the ball out to your playmakers. You saw the amazing catch from Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall coming back, looking solid. So there's talent on that Jets roster. You just need Zach Wilson to kind of control it. But, I mean, it's tough. They're in a super, super tough position. Aaron Rodgers going down with that injury before even completing a pass. Jets are definitely in a very, very weird spot right now. But I would say they just stick it out with Zach Wilson. He's been there last couple years. He knows the system. So I think they just stick with Wilson.
And I saw reports apparently Jets coaches couldn't sleep last night after losing Rodgers.
I saw that.
But one person I do like that if they could get a trade is Jacoby Brissett, backup quarterback over there in Washington. Played solid for the Browns last year, even won them some games, and he just had to be that Brock Purdy type player. He's a veteran that leads. Carson Wentz has been a name out there. Jameis, I think Matt Ryan as well. So definitely some names that have been thrown out there. But, I mean, watching the game last night, Zach Wilson, we know his arm talent. He could zip the ball in there. It's just those mistakes and those, trying to do too much like Josh Allen did last night. And I guess we'll talk about the Bills later on in the episode, but that's all my hot or nots for today. It's going to move us to, we're going to do a week 1 recap. We got 3 games: Dolphins, Chargers, Bears, Packers, and we'll talk about the 49ers, Steelers. Starting off with the Dolphins, man, see the shirt, the cheetah, got the penguin on there, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, 200-plus yards. I mean, if he's not out there for OPOY this year in that conversation at least already, he wants 2K yards. Can he be the first to do it? I don't see him staying healthy for every game, especially being a speed guy. You tweak a lot of muscles. He always has leg injuries, hamstring, whatnot. I think that's his only issue, staying on the field. But as far as the Dolphins-Chargers game goes, Dolphins offense, obviously huge highlight in that game between Tua and Tyreek. Raheem Mostert, he had some decent runs, same with Sullivan Ahmed. But the receivers looked good. They went deep into the depth chart. I mean, no Cedric Wilson was out, so
should have brought up my boy, man.
What, Chosen? Huh. Didn't he change his name again? But Braxton Berrios stepped up. Smythe, the tight end, stepped up. Robert Craycraft had a huge game, caught a touchdown as well. And then obviously the two-headed monster between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Speed running across the field. Jason Sanders, kicker, who had a kind of a shaky last year after a great first year. Seeing back, he had some big field goals, long field goals as well. I really like the offense. The O-line held up even with no Teron Armstead. Huge highlight, keeping Tua, upright in that pocket most of the game. And holding Bosa and Mac off the edge was huge. Run defense was the biggest question mark. Christian Wilkins kind of had not even an off day. He just couldn't stop the run, and, he can't single-handedly every game be the one just to stop the run. I know he plays that nose tackle position in a 3-4, but they're going to need more from that run defense. It was tough watching that. Secondary, they were looking pretty decent. Kader Kohu, like the game he played out there. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey out for, at least, I think, 7 weeks or whatever it is, 8 weeks. But I just want to see that run defense improved. I think Tua showed that grit, ended the game, like I said earlier, to where he was able to close out a game, minute and a half. Vic Fangio called up the right defense, something that, wasn't there in Miami the past couple years. Got pressures. Jalen Phillips continues to do his thing, one of the rising pass rushers, and one of my favorite player on the Dolphins as well. So I really like the defensive, play calling late in the game. I think drawing that pressure on Herbert. And as far as the Chargers, I mean, you got to get some help out over there. They established the run, which is a big surprise, something they usually don't do. But that defense is abysmal. I mean, it's awful. They gave up way too many big plays. I think Khalil Mack was guarding Tyreek Hill on one of the first plays of the game, lined up in the slot. So when you're drawing that up, I don't think it's a good game plan for sure.
Yeah, just the Chargers, their defense is really going to be a big question mark because the last couple seasons it was always, Derwin James was out, or Joey Bosa went down with an injury. They were always missing a couple key pieces. But today, week 1, they pretty much had everyone there, so that was a big surprise. You thought they'd put up, more of a fight. J.C. Jackson, a big free agent acquisition, was just getting torched all day. He did have the interception, but I mean, other than that, which Tua kind of underthrew right to him. But other than that, man, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, those guys were giving him it was a rough day, and you kind of touched on everything. The Dolphins, that offense looked really good. I think Tua looked a lot more comfortable in the offense as well. He looked really decisive with his passes. I think that was a big thing that kind of helped him. You talked about keeping that pressure off, where Tua wasn't really in the pocket, holding on to the ball. He was catching it, reading, getting rid of it really quick. And when you have those two fast receivers, you can get rid of the ball quick, 15, 20 yards down the field because those guys are running. So that made it a lot easier. And I think Tua's playmaking ability kind of, out of context because everyone always thought Tua's a system quarterback. That's what he showed. He can be really accurate, like when the play's drawn up and he knows right where to go. But you mentioned, that third down, he made a couple nice plays, rolling to his left, out of structure, big throws. He also had that one throw, climbing up in the pocket, throwing that strike down the field. So, Tua's showing a couple flashes, that he's able to play make and create out of the pocket where we really just only thought of, Tua sitting back there, one read and go. Whereas he's progressing, he's reading, he's buying time and making big plays. That's what the elite of the elite quarterbacks have to do nowadays to win those games. And Tua's showing flashes that he can make it to that level. And then Tyreek Hill, you touched on it. He was like the player of the day, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I think I heard he had a press conference or whatever. Him and Mike McDaniels were talking about I'm actually running routes and I'm actually playing receiver now. He would mention last year I was just running just to get open, but he's like, now I'm actually running routes and actually getting open, not just because of my speed, which is insane for someone like Tyreek Hill to say, who's considered one of the best receivers in the league. And he's like, yeah, now he's finally perfecting his route running craft, and he's finally not just using his speed. He's getting savvy, using those breaks, getting in and out. And you kind of saw it in this game where, yeah, he was Tyreek Hill just running past dudes, but I mean, he was getting open. He was creating separation with his routes. So if Tyreek Hill can hit that on a consistent level, and then now you're talking 2K yards, pretty easy. Getting open like that, being able to create separation with your routes and your speed, that's just unguardable. So Tyreek Hill apparently trying to tap into some, potential that's there. We'll see. This Dolphins offense is going to be fun. They're going to score a bunch of points. That motion and stuff McDaniels drew up was really nice as well. Almost kind of like the arena football or whatever, giving those guys that run and start when they snap the ball. I think that also really helped Tua kind of, figure out what the coverages and reads were before the snap, give those guys a head start. It just looked like the Dolphins were just more prepared than the Chargers in that game. And, I mean, I said in the hot or not, the Dolphins looking like one of, if not the best team in the AFC right now. I mean, not all of the big names kind of fell, so I mean, the Dolphins and the Jags, those are the two that kind of came out on top in terms of teams that I think that put on an impressive performance week 1 in the AFC. But, yeah, I think the Dolphins, if you're a Dolphins fan right now, as long as Tua is healthy, you should be excited.
Yeah, and I forgot to say that first drive the Dolphins had when they drove all the way inside the 10 and had another bad exchange between Tua and Connor Williams. I mean, that changed, the momentum just to start the game, and being able to bounce back and still keep that offense going. Shows his veteran presence now and his, poise as a quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
It's going to move us to the Bears and the Packers. Do you want to start off this one?
Yeah. I mean, the Bears and Packers this year was like the Bears and Packers every other year we watched football. Packers showing dominance, and the Bears kind of looking lost. I'll start with the Bears just because a couple question marks, and it's unfortunate that Justin Fields still has these question marks at this point in his career. You like to see him develop. You like to see him take some steps. But I think out of all of the passes he threw, I believe only like a handful of them went past 10 yards. A lot of checking down, a lot of stuff behind the scrimmage. DJ Moore with only 2 targets. Not kind of how you want to use your best weapon. But the Bears, they need to play better. But the takeaway, the highlight of this game was the Packers and Jordan Love. And, it's seeming like they hit on 3 straight QBs in a row. Jordan Love didn't play, an amazing game, but he played really, really well. Made the reads that he needed to read. He looked sharp in that offense. Not Aaron Rodgers' offense anymore. We see LaFleur, he's running his scheme, his system and stuff. So Jordan Love had 3 years to sit behind him. Just pretty much make that offense his, really, really learn it. And we saw a lot of quick, decisive throws. That run game also helped. Aaron Jones looked really, really good before he, came up and pulled that hamstring or whatever. But the Packers just continue to dominate the Bears. And that's pretty much what I thought going into the game. Jordan Love doing what he needed to do. Romeo Doubs had a really big game, getting the tight ends involved. Aaron Jones also in the screen game coming out of the backfield. Had that one screen pass for a big gain and then a little Texas route out the backfield. those linebackers were kind of, getting picked on a lot by Jordan Love, where TJ Edwards from the Eagles and Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills were some of the best linebackers, if not the two best linebackers in free agency. They kind of had a tough game, but it is week one. If you're a Bears fan, hopefully, things can get better, things can turn around. But, if I'm a fan of the Packers, I loved what I saw. Jordan Love went out there and made this team better, didn't hinder him, and wasn't just a game manager. He put on a really good performance against the Bears team where if you're a Packers fan, you just expect to beat them. So, yeah, I'm unfortunate for the Bears. It could possibly be, another 10, 15 years of just losing to the Packers.
Yeah, I think you touched on it pretty well. I mean, the Bears offense, they were in the game for the most part until it kind of got sloppy in that fourth quarter with the Justin Fields pick and everything like that. But you mentioned it perfectly. I mean, this is not Aaron Rodgers. This is Jordan Love we're talking about. And he knew his first game as a true starter, Aaron Rodgers' departure. Let's not do too much. He said, let me get the ball to the playmakers. I mean, Aaron Jones, I think, housed that screen for a huge chunk of yards. Mm-hmm. He had 9 carries for 41 yards. A.J. Dillon couldn't really get it going on the ground too much, but the Packers kind of stayed true to, let's try to establish the run. And then he also spread the ball out, so he was making the right reads. Musgrave 3 catches, Jaden Reed 2 catches, Dobbs 4 catches, A.J. Dillon 2, Samori 2 catches. So, he's kind of getting everyone involved in that offense, just making the right reads, getting the balls in the right spot, and not turning the ball over. Most important thing to do as a quarterback in the NFL. I was, lower on the Packers than you were, and I took the Bears, and they kind of showed, same old Bears maybe.
And this Packers offense, I don't even think we've seen the best of them yet. Because Christian Watson, their number one receiver, he was out with that hamstring, whatever. And I know Dobbs questionable all week. He missed a ton of practice. He was kind of, I think like a Friday or Saturday decision to play. So he wasn't really out there at all. So he wasn't 100%. So I think, these guys get back healthy and, without the injuries and they stay afloat. Jordan Love and his Packers offense can really, really, be a threat in the NFC.
And I will say the Bears part, Chase Claypool, I mean, he gave up, he looked awful out there, lost. He couldn't even lay down a block. It looked like half effort.
Mapletron.
And he was not helping the team at all. I mean, Darnell Mooney looked like the best player on that field for the Bears.
Yeah, he had a nice touchdown catch.
And maybe if Justin Fields I kind of want to see the Bears just try to let him fully loose and let him just zip it and rip it at some point. You're just going to have to see what it is with Justin Fields. And, you mentioned, I don't know how many throws went past 10 yards. I think that's more in the play design rather than, Justin Fields in itself. At least let's see what happens, Mm-hmm. He only played, I think, with the 1 drive in the preseason or whatever, 2 drives, and they were screen past his house for touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Gave away their whole scheme.
Yeah, and then you come in week 1 and run the same thing. At least change it up. Something. Don't run it in preseason.
Nice.
Could have saved that for week 1. But, yeah, that's my Packers defense looked very solid, too. I mean, they were, giving Justin Fields some fits, too, as well.
Yeah, their defense looks solid, which it has been for the past couple of years. And that O-line held up really nice for Jordan Love as well, too.
Yeah. Definitely did, man. It's going to move us to, in my opinion, one of the worst games we could watch.
Depending on who you're a fan of.
Yeah. Unless you're a fan of the San Francisco 49ers and that Steelers-Niners game, it was not fun. I mean, I think we've all seen the stat line and the pictures of the 199 yards from San Fran, 1 yard for the Steelers. It was abysmal to watch. It gave you the hot or not on Kenny Pickett. I've said it here before. Kenny Pickett, I don't think is gonna be a guy in this league. Maybe he'll be a veteran presence bouncing around the league, journeyman quarterback. That's really my ceiling for Kenny Pickett. And preseason hype, the best QBR as you mentioned. I feel like it got to everybody's head, and they forget it's preseason football. Now, granted, week 1, one of the top defenses in this league, most complete teams. But, I mean, it was ugly top to bottom, offense and defense for the Steelers. Brock Purdy, he had a day. Brandon Ayuk looked like Tyreek Hill out there. I mean, he was cooking defenses, and he might be a top 10 receiver. Like, that's how it was really looking. And, I mean, CMC, insane runs as well. He was breaking off, but it's not like it was anything crazy from the Niners. They're just doing 49ers things, taking care of business, just getting the ball to their playmakers. And the Steelers defense, who, you know, we mentioned the TJ Watt 3 sacks, but it really didn't even help out the team getting blown out. So the Steelers are going to need to hit a reset button. I don't think it's going to be this week. We'll talk about that. But just ugly game from the Steelers, and the 49ers did not make mistakes.
Yeah, so kind of like you did in the last game with the Packers and Bears. I'm going to sit here and I got to lick my wounds with the Steelers, man. Like I mentioned, I was a little ahead. I was on the side of Kenny Pickett, know a couple Steelers fans. So maybe them, talking them up, a lot of propaganda being spewed to me kind of chose me to lean towards the Steelers. But you pretty much touched it, man. And going in, I thought it would be a lot more competitive game defensively. But, I mean, when your defense is just on the field all the time, it's kind of hard. It doesn't really make it easy for them guys. And like you mentioned, Patrick Peterson, not able to keep up with those young guys as much. I think this was more on the 49ers, though, than it was on the Steelers, because week one, a lot of teams come out, a lot of guys looking rusty. I'll even mention Jalen Hurts, my Eagles. There was times where, you could tell he didn't play during the preseason, kind of, knocking out the rust. A lot of teams didn't look too sharp week one. A lot of defenses had pretty good games. But in terms of the 49ers, it looked like they were in mid-season form. It looked like they didn't miss a beat at all. They had everyone getting involved, everyone contributing. Kittle had a couple grabs. You mentioned McCaffrey. He looked really, really explosive out the backfield. He was back in Carolina. Ayuk, he looked like he's stepping up being the number one. And then you got Debo just in the slot, in the backfield, making plays all over. Offensive line held up, and that defense, one of the best performances. If it wasn't for, what the Cowboys did to the Giants on Sunday night, I'd probably say the best defensive performance of the day. They just look dominant on every side of the ball, every front, every aspect. And, yeah, think bit off a little too much more than we could chew with the Steelers. I don't think they'll be horrible. I just think the Steelers are going to be who we always know they are, what we think they are. They're going to be a team floating around 500. They'll play a couple playoff teams that rest their starters at the end of the year. And Mike Tomlin isn't, under 500. He gets his 1 or 2 wins to go above. All is good in Pittsburgh. Usually, the Steelers are kind of lower, and then it's like, oh, wow, I was low on the Steelers, and they showed us that they're better. Now everyone was the needle kind of ticked a little towards being higher on the Steelers, and it's like, oh, wait, they might be a little bit worse than what we think, which is right in the middle. So I think that's just what we got from the Steelers, and the 49ers just show that, they up there with the Dolphins, up there with, that Cowboys performance. They're one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL right now. So it was a great dominant win for the 49ers, traveling across the country on the East Coast, coming from San Francisco. It clearly traveled well. So it was a great win for the 49ers, a statement win.
Yeah, it definitely was, especially for Brock Purdy coming off this offseason, trading Trey Lance, Jimmy G gone this offseason as well. He kind of, came out there and he did his thing, no doubt. That's going to push us to week 2 and the games we got coming up, man. And I kind of like this slate of games, man. I think, considering I have 2 teams, but your Eagles in prime time and my Dolphins and my Browns both in prime time. So I guess, it's national scale, big games for us this week. The Eagles playing the dreaded Thursday night game, kicking us off. Vikings traveling to Philly, playing the Eagles at, is it Lincoln Financial still?
Yeah, at the Link. Yep.
At the Link, yep. Lincoln Financial Field, man. And, the Vikings, who I was kind of, pretty decently high on in that North Division, I got them dropping to 0-2, man. They had a rough week 1 where they lost to the Bucks and the underdog Baker Mayfield, we'll touch on later. But, Justin Jefferson showed some frustration. Kirk Cousins turning the ball over, making some bad plays that really hurt this team and put them in a position to lose. Thursday night primetime, Kirk, whatever. I just think this is the game where the Eagles kind of get back on track. I think they started off, so hot against the Pats that they kind of put in cruise control mentally a little bit and sat back and got complacent a little, and that's how the Pats got back into it. And, the Eagles aren't in midseason form. They can't just snap right back into it. So I think that's what really happened with them. But prime time, I think the Eagles, I think it's a pretty close game. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. Both teams maybe in the 20s. But I got the Eagles close at home, against the NFC opponent. I think they need to go, 2-0 and maybe see some, flashes from Jalen Hurts of last year.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Eagles as well. Home opener for Philadelphia. I'll just touch on that game against the Patriots really quick. On the road, it's tough. You kind of mentioned they got complacent with the big 16-0 lead early on in the first quarter. But, against, Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest defensive coach ever, they finally got an OC, Bill O'Brien. He's, been productive in this league before. So, watching the film and stuff, it just looked like they always had an answer for what the Eagles had on defense. And offensively, it just came down to a couple big misplays. Jalen Hurts fumbling the ball, pressure from the Pats getting there a little bit, not picking up a couple blitzes. Hurts missing a couple reads. I know Dallas Goedert was open a lot that game, but it kind of looked like Hurts was just predetermined throwing the ball. One drive, Devontae Smith is hot, and he just locks onto him. Next drive, A.J. Brown gets it going. Not really, scanning the field, which I understand. Picking on the rookie. Christian Gonzalez a lot. He had a rough first game, but, guarding arguably the two best receiver duo in the league. That's a crazy first NFL game going up against Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. So I think it was a really good first game for the Eagles to let them know that, you're not going to be able to just cruise control this entire season, maybe like you did a little bit last year. Knocked the rust off, came out with the win most importantly, and I think they should look to get back on track, although there were a couple big injuries, a couple big names that might not be suiting up on Thursday. Bradbury might be out with the concussion. He had a head injury. N'Kobe Dean placed on IR, foot injury. He'll be out for a couple weeks. And then Fletcher Cox and Kenneth Gainwell both banged up with ribs. Hopefully both of those guys will play. But, last year got kind of lucky with the injuries. This year, starting off early week 1. But like you mentioned, with the Vikings, it just looked like the worst team against the Bucs, man. It was weird. Defensively, they played okay. Just let a couple big plays. Mike Evans down the field, middle of the post, caught a nice pass. Baker, you've watched him play. If there's one thing he can do is throw the ball down the field. Everything else might not be there, but Baker always had a solid deep ball. And offensively, you touched on it. The Vikings, a lot of big miscues. Justin Jefferson is going to get his regardless, but 150 receiving yards, no touchdown. Kirk Cousins, just dropping the snap, bad fumbles, and throwing interceptions that just aren't really the throw to be making. So I think the Eagles kind of build off a solid, gritty, ugly win last year at home, kind of, pull the scale back, like, okay, let's relax, let's calm down and play football. And I think the Eagles win a convincing game on Thursday to get back on track.
No doubt, man. I'm going to refer to the bottom of the list, those games I missed. I'm going to cover those real quick. Mm-hmm. For us 49ers, not really traveling. They're going down south to the state of California against the Los Angeles Rams, man, who, surprising week 1 for the Rams. They played a very good game. Surprisingly beating those Seahawks who had a surprising year last year. Are we too high in the Seahawks? We'll see about that. But 49ers, Rams, we just touched on, Matt Stafford and that offense and how good it could be. But, this 49ers defense, it's tough to kind of bet on the Rams right now. I got, a lot of question marks. No Cooper Kupp, top weapon. I just don't think the Rams would be able to do it on both ends of the football, defense and offense. Going to be a very tough task stopping this 49ers offense, who seems like they got it going on, every level at every position on the football field. So I got the Rams, taking an L at home, going 1-1 to start the season without Cooper Kupp. Not bad. And, I'm pretty sure they were a little bit lower, but the Rams still have hope. Niners travel 2-0 for them.
Yeah, I also think the 49ers win this game. And I think Matthew Stafford showing us how important it is to have a really good quarterback in this league, no matter who you have on the offense. You kind of mentioned, health-wise, he looked fully healthy. You saw him stepping up, moving around, making pretty much every single throw in the pocket, feeding a bunch of those guys, Tutu Atwell. Puka, you mentioned a lot of the Higbee had a couple nice grabs. Run game wasn't really there, which where if you're the Rams, you kind of want to have a run game to lean on, so you don't have 35-year-old Matthew Stafford throwing the ball so much. But he proved that he can, kind of get back to his Super Bowl form, maybe Detroit form, where he was ripping the ball all across the place. It looked good. If you're the Rams, you got Matthew Stafford. Maybe the window isn't completely closed. Maybe you try to be a little competitive, but I don't think that's going to be something you can do against the 49ers, especially how they came out and just killed a team that we thought could be a little competitive. So the Rams, I think, are kind of in the same place or along the same levels as the Steelers. That defense, all those weapons are healthy. As long as all those guys are on the field. Fred Warner made a bunch of crazy plays against the Steelers, had a drop pick, which could have been a pick six, tipped another interception. So, yeah, the 49ers got talent all over the place, and I think it might be a little too much for the division rivals. And I think the 49ers kind of, it was for a couple years, it was always the Rams beating the 49ers in the playoffs and all those big games. But I think, 49ers kind of, they got this game under control. I think they win pretty convincingly as well.
It's going to take us to the new look Vegas Raiders, man. They travel east into the northeast part of New York to play the Buffalo Bills, man. Bills' first home game, struggled week one, big time. Josh Allen trying to do too much against that elite Jets defense, came back to bite them. I like what I saw from Stephon Diggs picking up his quarterback in that game, even though they lost, man. It's a tough one. It's only week one. I expect Josh Allen to come back and be, still a top 10 quarterback. Playing against the Raiders, Jimmy G, they played a solid game. Josh Jacobs couldn't really get it going last week. They played the Broncos. It was a pretty solid game. They were able to finish it in the second half. But here, I got the Bills, man. They need to bounce back, get a statement win after that terrible week one loss where Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, first drive of the game, and you got Zach Wilson to back up, and you can't complete the game going into overtime, and you let up your Josh Allen. You throw a pick that leads to points, and then you also have that bad snap where he picked up and he fumbled. I think that was, the biggest mistake there. You got to take care of the football even at that point. If you just fall on it and just keep it, but just trying to do too much, expect Josh Allen, against a lesser Raiders defense to be able to sling it, do Josh Allen-like things. And I got the Bills winning at home.
Yeah, I think this should be a, get back on track game for the Bills as well. The Raiders, they're an okay team, kind of scratch and claw to win against the Broncos. But you mentioned that Jets defense looked really, really good. And I don't think this Raiders defense is anywhere, as near as good as that Jets defense. So hopefully a couple easier looks for the Bills. Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen had a nice connection, but it just got to a point where Allen was just trying to force him the ball in double coverage over the top where he just wasn't there. I think, I don't want to say it was uncharacteristic of Josh Allen because he is turnover prone. He turns the ball over, but, the way he was doing it, whereas it just seemed like he just locked onto Diggs, was just trying to force. Not the best bet. Good teams, especially good defenses like the Jets, are going to kind of lock on to your best target and try to take that away from you. The Raiders, I don't really see them, being able to do that. Jimmy Garoppolo had a solid game. Jacoby Myers was favorite target. He unfortunately went out with a concussion. Probably won't be playing, especially after how bad as that hit looked. Still got Devontae Adams. Still got a couple weapons. You mentioned Josh Jacobs. Maybe he gets something going on the ground. Breece Hall had a couple nice runs. So maybe we see a bounce-back game from Jacobs. But ultimately, I think talent wise and coaching wise, the Bills should be able to run away with this game as long as Josh Allen can protect the ball.
Yeah, it's going to take us to the Los Angeles Chargers traveling to Tennessee to play the Titans, man. And here I got a bounce back game. Not really bounce back game for Justin Herbert, but kind of for the defense. You know, the Titans, they didn't look too good week one at all. Really couldn't get anything going, whether it was Derrick Henry or Ryan Tannehill attempting to throw the football. Made a lot of bad plays. I think this should be, I know it's on the road, but this should be a win for the Chargers. Just come out there, play your game. Kind of want to see just that defense get a step in the right direction, give them a little momentum. We know what Justin Herbert can do. We saw it last in week one, him feasting. Kind of expect the same from him. Big talent in the league. I got the Chargers winning on the road.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of just repeating. I got the Chargers as well. The Titans, like you mentioned, Tannehill didn't look good at all, really. Missing a lot of throws, sailed a couple throws, guys open. He's just not on the same page, just missing them. Derrick Henry looked okay in his attempts. Had a nice, I think, couple decent runs, a nice screen pass early on in the game. So, there's potential there. If the Titans want to look to exploit that Chargers defense that got taken advantage of last week. But like you mentioned, man, I think this offense figures things out, gets that scheme down. Defense won't have as much as a challenge against, guarding Tyreek and Waddle on the perimeter. Kind of the exact opposite with older DeAndre Hopkins and who's their number 2, Traylon Burks. He's back healthy. So, yeah, I think it'll be an easier challenge. Even though it's on the road, Titans just didn't really look that good. Weren't able to finish that game out against the Saints. So, I'm going to pick the Chargers as well to get their first win.
AFC North matchup. Baltimore Ravens going to Cincinnati to play the Bengals, man. I'll let you kick it off.
I'm gonna pick the Bengals. The Ravens, like you mentioned, against the Texans team where there was a lot of ups and downs for that team. The Ravens still looked like they were having trouble to pull away. Eventually were able to kind of run the rock, score a couple touchdowns at the end after unfortunately losing J.K. Dobbins to yet another damn near career at this point, but another season-ending injury. And the Bengals, like you touched on, it was just an ugly, ugly game, man. The weather wasn't there. The Browns have just always seemed to have their numbers. I think, against the Ravens at home, whereas that defense, especially that pass rush for the Browns, was able to get home. I don't think the Ravens' pass rush will be as near as dominant. I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals have a good bounce-back game, and they get on the board and take this win.
Yeah, I think that J.K. Dobbins injury, it's going to lean on Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. Yeah, you kind of mentioned not being able to pull away. It took them a while for the Ravens to pull away. As far as the Bengals, I mean, Cleveland, they kind of built this team, even though they gave all that money to Deshaun Watson. They kind of banked this team, to win those nasty weather games and making it, a great run-blocking team with Nick Chubb as your workhorse. Big injury. For the Bengals, they played in that bad weather game. Joe Burrow really couldn't get it going. First drive, he had a big third down to Jamar Chase. Maybe looked like they had something early. The pass rush from the Cleveland Browns ended up getting to Burrow. New additions on the D-line. Talk about the Browns later. But the Bengals, Joe Mixon really could not get it going whatsoever either in that run game. Kind of won't expect the same. Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, I don't expect him to be held catchless all game. But I got the Bengals winning at home against the Ravens. I think it's still going to take them another game for that new offense to kind of start reaching, near potential for them. That's going to move us to a team we were high on in the Seattle Seahawks, traveling to Detroit to play the Lions, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Seahawks it was an unfortunate game, man. The Rams just looked like they came out and dominated. They were ready for that game. Unfortunate, Seahawks dealt with a couple, key injuries throughout that game. So there's going to be some question marks. And the Lions, they had, one of the most impressive wins in week one, defeating the Chiefs at Arrowhead, getting the win. They just looked really impressive. Jared Goff made the throws he needed to. Amon-Ra got going. Jahmyr Gibbs looked explosive in the few touches he got. That defense seemed to step up, from last year. Aiden Hutchinson made a lot of nice plays. So I think, with the injuries and the question marks around the Seahawks, a couple players banged up. The Lions are riding hot. They're feeling good. I think the Lions at home, that crowd is going to be crazy. Lions are actually relevant in football. Detroit's been needing that for a while. So I think the Lions have a good game here and win at home.
Yeah, man. We were talking about the Seahawks and some losses at the tackle position. Geno Smith getting banged up a little bit. Tyler Lockett, concussion as well. So we'll see about that. But, traveling to Detroit on the road, it's tough for the Seahawks, for a team that I thought, had the potential, to be a wild card team in that NFC. I think the Lions start this season off 2-0, and there's not too many years ever you'd say, Lions got a chance at 2-0. But I think it's one of those years, man. Energy's different in Detroit. The weapons they got, Amon-Ra St. Brown on the outside is just, probably like one of the most secure, wide receivers you could trust in, just to go out there, do a job, and be, a top-tier wide receiver. Still don't think he gets, kind of that credit. We might see more of Jahmyr Gibbs getting eased into the offense. You mentioned Aiden Hutchinson. A lot of pressures on Pat Mahomes last week. He was looking great out there. And they held their own against Pat Mahomes. I know, no Travis Kelce, Kadarius Toney with some ugly drops that led to, tip ball drills. And we know what happens for DBs. When they see that ball in the air, it's up there forever for them. So they made some plays when they needed to, executed well, and just kind of, expect them to win at home. I think this will be a good game. I think the Seahawks kind of get back on track, but Lions too much for Seattle. So got the Lions, man. It's going to move us to AFC South between the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans, man. Go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Colts here, even though it's on the road. Might be, definitely going to be an easier matchup for the Texans that, their team they had some ups and downs, what you'd expect for a rookie quarterback. But I think the Colts, with another rookie quarterback, this will be a fun matchup. Two rookies showing off, playing against each other. I just think, Anthony Richardson, he looked a lot more explosive. He looked a lot more dynamic in that Colts offense against a solid Jags team, was able to put up points. Got a rushing and passing touchdown. Looked really dynamic on the ground. So, it was a typical rookie first game. Missed a couple throws high, airmailed a couple passes. But their defense looked okay at times. That Trevor Lawrence-Calvin Ridley connection kind of got to him. But I just think the Colts are the better team. Texans still, trying to figure some things out. Whereas I think the Colts definitely know Anthony Richardson's their guy. And he looks solid, and I think they just, build off of that with a win in week 2 on the road, which would be huge.
I was going to say, man, I was kind of, slightly impressed with both of these rookie quarterbacks, man. Anthony Richardson, he had the one pick, but, he looked solid all game, finding his top target in Michael Pittman. I just think the lack of the Colts getting the run game going, I think there's hinting a return of Zach Moss. Maybe he'll step into a role and take over that running back room and kind of give them a, serviceable running back to where take some pressure off, Anthony Richardson. But, CJ Stroud, I liked what I saw from him throwing the football. Looked pretty decent out there, threw for 200 plus in his debut. And, he's starting to find a groove with Nico Collins, Robert Woods, both of them having solid days, and clearly both of his favorite targets so far. But I just got Anthony Richardson, just that running upside here in this game. As long as he doesn't turn that ball over, fumble it, lose it carelessly, I think the Colts got a great chance to win. If not, it's the Texans games. But I'm going with the Colts as well here. That's going to push us to the Chicago Bears traveling to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers, man. Go ahead. This is, I think, our first switch up of teams here right now.
Yeah, I'm just going to take the Bucs, mostly because they're at home. I think this could be a toss-up game, but that Bucks defense looked pretty good against the Vikings. You know, they got some solid veterans on that back end, some guys that they know what they're doing. And I think against the Bears, offense that's showed they're still kind of struggling. I think they can give Justin Fields some fits here on the road. At home, Baker Mayfield, he's gonna be hyping up this crowd, just giving into all that noise and stuff. So I think he'll be in his element. And they got some playmakers on the outside. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are still really, really solid producers on the outside for the Bucks. So I just think at home, easier matchup offensive wise for the Bucks. I'm gonna take them at home.
Yeah, man. And this one, I'm still banking on the Bears. Really don't know why after that Week 1 performance, but I got them traveling on the road in that Tampa Heat, getting a dub, mainly because I've been hearing a lot, Baker Mayfield's back, this and that. Watched a lot of Baker Mayfield in my life. I'm grateful for the time in Cleveland. He gave us a big playoff win against the sorry Steelers. So always love Baker for that, man. But if the Bears could just apply a little pressure and force Baker Mayfield feet to start moving in that pocket, they will have a field day against him. So I got the Bears, Justin Fields. I want to see him kind of get unleashed. That Bucks defense did look very serviceable and solid. You mentioned the veterans and whatnot for him, but I think the Bears, they need to establish that run game truly, and then let Justin Fields take a couple shots, man. Don't be afraid. We know he has a big arm. He did it at Ohio State. He did it, in high school. He's now time to prove it in the NFL for Justin Fields. So I got the Bears winning on the road in a tough game. Next up is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, two of the AFC's top teams going up against each other. Go ahead and give me your pick.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun game. I think we'll see a lot of points scored. Chris Jones, he's coming back, signed that one-year deal, which is tough because apparently he was, had a lot more money sitting on the table, but comes back on a one-year kind of prove-it deal or a rental. Travis Kelce, hopefully he'll be back fully healthy from that injury. Mahomes has his security blanket, his go-to guy there. If he's on the field, they're going to be moving the ball, scoring a lot of points. And Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley, man, that connection looks to be alive and well. Saw a lot of great things for them. ETN and Take Bigsby seem to be productive on the ground. Colts defense, the Chiefs defense that seemed to step up really well against the Lions. I think this Jaguars defense is going to be offense is going to give them a little bit more fits. Trevor Lawrence, more dynamic player than Jared Goff, who's a really good quarterback in this league. But I think the talent, arm talent, everything Trevor Lawrence brings to the table will be a kind of a different beast. So I think it'll be a back and forth game. I can see a lot of points being scored, a lot of fun, big plays happening when you have two super talented quarterbacks like this on the field. But I just think the Chiefs, they're the better team, beat them last year in the playoffs, kind of have their number at this point. I believe in Patrick Mahomes down the stretch. Maybe whichever team has the ball last, but I like the Chiefs here on the road. Get that first win and even it up 1-1 for both of these teams.
Yeah, I think in a Chiefs Pat Mahomes era, they're not sure how many games they've lost 2 in a row. It's probably not many, if any. So kind of expect them to get back on track. Chris Jones, you mentioned. I love that Calvin Ridley connection over there in Jacksonville. That looks dangerous for the AFC. I mean, they had a field day. They love Tanks Bigsby. You mentioned him. He had a solid day as well. But I got the Chiefs, man. I don't, predict Kadarius Toney to look like a scared kid out there on the field, even if he gets targets. I expect him to get a second chance. I mean, there's not too many options at that receiver position for the Chiefs, so it's, you're Slim Pickens, and he's got the talent. We know he can play. He just needs to kind of get a little confidence going. I think he might this week, especially if Kelce comes back, take some pressure off, open it up for him. I think the Chiefs will end up winning this game, and I think it might be, a 10-point game, but like you mentioned, it might come down to that last possession. But regardless, I just don't see the Chiefs going 0-2 right now. If they do, then it's time for them to kind of step it up because I don't think they haven't been the 1 seed just yet in that Pat Mahomes era to where he's been him. So big game for the Chiefs coming up, no doubt. It's going to move us to an NFC matchup, man. New York Giants, Arizona Cardinals in Arizona.
Yeah, the Giants coming off of an ugly, ugly opening week 1 loss at home to the Dallas Cowboys. And I think the Cardinals, they put on a solid performance against the Commanders and almost pulled it off. But, I mean, the Cardinals are just all over the place. And the Giants, although they did get embarrassed by the Cowboys on national television, although they did keep Daniel Jones in the game for way too long for no reason, just taking hit after hit, just for literally no reason at all. I think the Giants are a better team. They're better than the Cardinals. They'll be able to run the ball like they want to. They were able to run the ball against the Cowboys on that first drive and move down the field pretty easily. It wasn't until they got those Giants, behind the 8 ball a little bit, a couple big special team plays, a couple defensive plays, had the Giants, in only passing situations where you don't want Daniel Jones and those weapons in only passing situations. I think they'll be able to get to a comfortable lead early. They'll run the ball, make easy reads for Daniel Jones. And I think, after getting embarrassed and blown out like that, game against the Cardinals is what the Giants need. And I think they, get back on track and get a win here.
Yeah, man, I'm not going to get too deep, too analytical into this. I think you covered exactly every point, man. The Giants need a bounce-back game, and they're playing the Cardinals. They could not make a better schedule for the Giants right now. This part for them.
Just what the doctor prescribed.
Yeah, bro. He just walked in, gave the Giants the script, man, and they're taking it to CVS as we speak. The Giants, they should win this one clear-cut. Cardinals, if they win this one, it's time to maybe hit panic button for New York, and maybe a little credit to the Cardinals as well and those guys in Arizona, but it was abysmal Sunday night. They should have just turned the game off mid-broadcast, but Micah Parsons, he even mentioned on his podcast, he doesn't know why Daniel Jones was left in, and I think that was probably Brian Dable's worst coaching decision of his career. You're leaving a guy you just paid, your franchise guy, even if, you want to knock off Russ. You gotta take him out, man. You're just letting him get killed. He was getting killed back there. It was not fun. So it's gonna move us to the other team in New York, and the New York Jets and Dallas Cowboys, who I think is gonna be one of our, better games this week, even without Aaron Rodgers in Dallas. We mentioned the Cowboys and how Micah Parsons got after it, and the rest of that defense as well. The Jets defense, probably just better than that Cowboys defense, but I don't see Zach Wilson getting another win like they did last night, especially with that punt return. The offense really struggled. It was first and second down every time was a run for the Jets. You knew what they were coming out with. Maybe a little game plan, something different. I got the Cowboys, man.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Cowboys here as well. And what probably will be a defensive, low-scoring game. Dak Prescott, against the Giants, they got a big win, shut him out, but he wasn't really too impressive. Didn't have to do too much against the Giants. They were up by so many points just off of defense and special teams, where Dak Prescott wasn't really asked to do much. So this will definitely be his first real challenge of the year. And like you mentioned, Zach Wilson on the other side. Unfortunately, what happened to Aaron Rodgers. Tough first week matchup for him to be able to go starting quarterback, stepping in, going against the Cowboys defense that literally just shut out and obliterated the Giants. So I think we see two defenses continue to take advantage of offenses with question marks or offenses that haven't really been challenged yet. And I'm going to just pick the Cowboys because they're at home, and I like what they have a little bit better on offense.
Yeah, 13 for 24. He really didn't have to work, man. That's going to lead us to the Commanders versus the Broncos, man. Why don't you go ahead and give us your pick?
I'm going to pick the Commanders. The Broncos looked like they had that game against the Raiders pretty much under control. Just wasn't able to close it out. Russell Wilson didn't look horrible. Sean Payton, got that team under control. A little throwback to the Super Bowl with the onside kick. But I like what Sam Howell showed with the Commanders, man. He was against they played the Cardinals. Yeah, he stood in the pocket, made some decent throws. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dodson are two, really, really nice weapons on the outside. Brian Robinson looked pretty productive in the run game, and the Commanders' defense, I think, is going to be solid. So it'll be tough, Mile High on the road. I can see the Broncos winning, but I'm gonna just trust in Sam Howell. Those weapons. Maybe it comes down to a blown coverage or a big play. I like the Commanders here against the Broncos.
I'm gonna go with the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson had a solid game. 27 completions, 34 attempts, 2 TDs, but the one stat is kind of like a eye opener. 177 yards, very low, especially for 34 attempts and 27 completions. But they kind of had that game in control, as you mentioned. I just don't like the way the Commanders kind of played the Cardinals. They let them hang around, I think, a little too long. And if you let the Broncos do that, they got a better team, better coach, better quarterback play, just a better all-around roster. I don't think it'll be able to, work. Jerry Jeudy, will he be back? I'm looking at reports, maybe not. So, regardless, I kind of want to see Russ open up, find those guys, Cortland Sutton, etc. Javonte Williams, solid day. Samaje Perine, good debut over there. I think it was averaging over 5 yards a carry for the Broncos. So I expect the Broncos to get back even 500, 1-1 after this ball game. That's going to lead us to the Dolphins-Patriots, man, Sunday night football. And this is my matchup of the week, man. You go ahead. I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me. The Patriots at home showed a lot of fight against the Philadelphia Eagles. Mac Jones, with the offensive coordinator, looked good, man. He was, decisive with the ball, knew exactly where to go, made a couple nice throws down the stretch, even had a chance to win the games. Receivers, a couple receivers not able to get their feet completely in bounds, whereas Mac Jones did everything he could. He was distributing, throwing the ball, made a lot of nice throws against a solid Eagles defense. So this was tough, but I just think what the Dolphins showed, their speed on the outside, that ability to adjust by the defense at the end of the game, switch it up and come up big with a stop. Tua's kind of had the Patriots numbers. I don't think he's lost to them yet in his career, right? I think he hasn't lost to the Patriots yet. So I like the Dolphins here, man. Tyreek, couple big plays down the sideline, Jalen Waddle. It's just going to be tough for any defense to bottle those guys up. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins here and what should be a really, really, really good game.
You just hit me with a two stat I didn't even know because they're not the same Patriots, from years past. He's 4-0 against the Patriots.
Yeah, Tua plays good against New England.
And in 4 games, he's thrown for 726 yards, just 3 touchdowns, but he limits 2 turnovers. But, 2020, 2021, but going 2-0 sweep of division opponent last year in 2022 when he was healthy. I think one game he was coming back banged up. But the other game he threw for 270, a touchdown, and a 104 passer rating as well. So, I might be leaning to the Pats if I was not a Finns fan. Maybe just a little that at-home Sunday night vibe. Division opponent, you can't really go out like that. But I see the Dolphins, you might as well, mark it up to a 5-0. Because I got the Finns, man, Sunday night. I think this is going to be the best game. I think it's going to be lower scoring compared, especially to last week in the Dolphins game. Because that Patriots defense, pretty solid.
Pass defense is legit.
And for Christian Gonzalez to go against probably the second best duo receiving core in the NFL in Smitty and A.J. Brown to the best duo wide receiver core in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Going to be tough. Bill Belichick's going to draw up some crazy defensive scheme. But I got Mike McDaniel. It's not the same old Dolphins, man. Great coach on the other end as well. And, I got the Dolphins winning primetime Sunday night, man. That's going to push us to our doubleheader of Monday Night Football. So whatever game, you're kind of looking for, they got it Monday night. They got the Saints-Panthers and another divisional matchup. A lot of divisional matchups early on in the year. NFL scheduled. And I think it's going to be a pretty good one. Bryce Young kind of struggled through the air in game one. I got the Saints winning. Derek Carr looks solid. Run game, Jamal Williams kind of got it going towards the end. Chris Olave already looking like, a Pro Bowl-esque wide receiver over there in New Orleans. Derek Carr just looked very solid. Defense, played pretty well. Marshawn Lattimore made a play or two on the back end. I just think, Monday night lights are bright for Bryce Young. I see this one being, a decent game, but I see the Saints getting a big win on the road.
Yeah, this is, to me, when I see Panthers and Saints, this is going to be like a whatever game, man. The Saints, they looked okay against the Titans. Nothing crazy. I think it was more of the Titans looking horrible. And then you mentioned Bryce Young, up and down, shaky first game of his NFL career. Don't think it gets much easier. I think that Saints defense is going to be a lot tougher than the Falcons. But on the road, you mentioned Derek Carr looked okay. And I think that Saints defense gives Bryce Young some problems. Probably won't be the most entertaining game. I can see this game, being pretty low scoring. Both teams kind of in the teens or low 20s, but I think the Saints are better and they get a win here on Monday night.
And that's gonna get us to our second Monday night game, another divisional matchup, and it's the AFC North, man. The Cleveland Browns traveling to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. I mean, I got the Browns. I'm gonna touch on them and this new defense they got over there, and your guy Jim Schwartz, it looked phenomenal. They had Myles Garrett lining up over the center and the guards, swinging him around. Now that you have two viable edge rushers, and you can move Myles Garrett on the inside on those third down, passing scenarios where it's a pass. It just gives defense so many fits and problems because then the edge is still, you still got elite pass rushers. Darius Smith, the number 3 highest graded PFF player for edge rushers, and Myles Garrett, number 2 graded PFF in week 1. I mean, you got those guys coming off the edge. It's a scary sight. The Browns defense, I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. I think the Browns have the best corners in the NFL between Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Martin Emerson. The way they locked up Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even though it was wet and rainy, there was a couple chances where Joe Burrow gave him to Jamar Chase. He couldn't come down with them. Same with T. Higgins. Denzel made some great plays. What we like to call Emerson Island, and Greg Newsome playing well as well. Grant Delpit, not bad. Maybe Juwan Thornhill comes back for week 2 as well. He was out week 1. And then Deshaun Watson, in my opinion, the highest graded QB in the AFC North when it comes to QBR. Rainy game. His interception was tipped at the line of scrimmage. It was very shaky when I first watched it, but it got tipped up, man. He made some good throws, and those timing throws that weren't there last year when receivers are coming out of their break and just delivering the ball on time. He made a couple of those, fitting them in tight windows over a defender and while under a defender. Really like the throws he made. And, I mean, Nick Chubb's just doing Nick Chubb things. No one's talking about him. He had 106 yards in a rain game. So I expect the same. Nick Chubb, this offense, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore got it going. I like the way they use Elijah Moore, switching him from, in the slot to the backfield. Very versatile the way Kevin Stefanski's using him. And I kind of expect Deshaun Watson to get unleashed against the Steelers defense. Kenny Pickett's 1-0 in his career against the Browns, but I was just looking at his stats. His completion percentage was 44%, and he threw for 1 touchdown. So not really the greatest stats of all time. Against Kenny Pickett, we saw what happened last week. That Steelers defense, Watt scares me. Jack Conklin, he's out for the season with another torn ACL. But DeJuan Jones, the young big fella, I mean, he's massive on the outside as a tackle position. Question is, I know the Steelers are going to try to line up Watt on that side. Is he going to be quick enough off the ball to stop it? We'll see. Deshaun Watson, good mobility. But I got the Browns in a big AFC North matchup getting a win on the road.
Yeah, and You pretty much covered everything with the Browns. You mentioned Deshaun being unleashed. That week one, we didn't, weather conditions stuff. We didn't really get a chance to see it. So I'm gonna pull the range back just a little bit. I want to see it first with Deshaun Watson and that Browns offense. It was tough conditions, but one thing I do think is pretty solid is that defense, and we saw what a really really good defense did to the Browns on to the Steelers on week one, and I don't think this Browns matchup will be much easier for the Steelers. So I think a really big defensive game, maybe give the offense the ball in some plus positions, short drives, big turnovers. I just think this Browns defense will be a little too much for that Steelers offense, especially losing their number one receiver, Kenny Pickett, not really on the same page with those guys. So I think the Browns should win comfortably, on the backs of their impressive defensive performance.
That's going to wrap up, man, our week 2 predictions. Obviously, a long season ahead of us. I'm 10-6, you're 8-7. So we'll see. You're the reigning champ defending your crown. We'll see what happens in week 2, man. But that's going to wrap up Goal to Go, episode 56, man. Any last comments you got? Anything else? Topics? Anything like that?
No, man. It was a fun, exciting week 1. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of crazy stuff. But football's back.
You took the words right out of my mouth, man. Football's back. Sundays are back. Got something to look forward to during the week for sure. But that's going to wrap us up, man. Goal to Go Pod on TikTok. Go ahead, like, comment, share. Goal to Go on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Apple Podcast, Spotify Podcast, all that, man. Go ahead, tune in, man. And until next week, we'll catch y'all. Peace.